Good afternoon, everyone, and we're going to call to order the Economic Development, Planning and Tourism Committee. As we start, we're going to read the land acknowledgement, and as we gather, we would like to acknowledge, on behalf of Council and our community, that we are meeting on the traditional territory of the Algonquin people. We would like to thank the Algonquin people and express our respect and support for their rich history, and we are extremely grateful for their many and continued displays of friendship. We also thank all generations of people who have taken care of this land for thousands of years. Deputy Clerk.
So I'm going to go ahead and do roll call. So Chair McDonald.
Present.
Councillor Zabelski.
Present.
Councillor Dick.
Present.
Mayor Sidney.
Present.
Chair McDonald, we have quorum.
Thank you. Any declaration of pecuniary interest? Constable Dick.
Mr. Chair, I have a declaration of interest in Section D-3-2, rental of the parking lot at 1 Innovation Drive, as the application on the agenda is in regards to my business that is applying for this variance.
Thank you, and noted. We're going to be skipping Section C and heading to D. And prior to all of this, just for the people at home, at the start of the presentations, for those watching from home, the materials being presented can be found on the Town of Renfrew's website at www.renfrew.ca under the Municipal Calendar's appropriate meeting date. As we head into the Committee of Adjustment meeting, that the Economic Development, Planning and Tourism Committee resolve into Committee of Adjustment for the purpose of a public meeting for a minor variance application. Do I have a mover? And carried.
So you pick one of the gentlemen.
Almost, yeah, Councillor Zabalski. I almost went with a different word. And yep, I'm just formatting the, in terms of what we're looking at, the title is EDPT-230202. That in the matter of an application for a minor variance, file D13-55, submitted by Jeff Carrion for 611 Lisgar Avenue. And we're going to turn the floor over to Director Eric Withers, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. And thank you for everyone in attendance today and for everyone watching on the live stream. So just moving forward, over the course of the pandemic, we've invited participation electronically and in person. And so just moving forward as we come out of the pandemic, hopefully for the long run, and we kind of get back to in-person meetings, we're going to be requesting that if you would like to submit oral comments that you attend in person, and electronic participation is going to be limited to viewing only on YouTube. So thank you for those in attendance who have come to provide your input on the applications. So there are generally going to be two types of applications before this committee. This committee has a number of mandates, one of which is that it functions as the Committee of Adjustment for the Town of Renfrew. And the Committee of Adjustment is a committee established under the provisions of the Planning Act, and it makes decisions with respect to minor variances under Section 45, and also with respect to consent or severance applications under Section 53 of the Planning Act. And so those matters will reside with this committee in terms of the decisions. So these matters do not rise to council, variances and consents. The committee makes the decision on them. As of last year with Bill 23, the decision of the committee is not subject to third-party appeal, meaning that the only parties able to appeal decisions of the committee with respect to variances and consents would be the applicant. the minister, if the minister wishes to appeal any decision of that nature, or a very defined list of prescribed public bodies. So generally utilities and things at school boards and things of that nature, but generally speaking, no third-party appeals. So if, for example, for members of the public or residents, and that's with respect to specifically minor variance applications and consent or severance applications. The second type of Planning Act application that this committee will be dealing with are matters that will then rise to council for a decision, or the county, as the case may be. So common applications that this committee will see in that regard is, we have one on the agenda tonight. It's an application for zoning bylaw amendment. So for an application like that, it requires a bylaw to be passed. This committee does not pass bylaws, so it will be required to rise to council. So this committee will make a recommendation that council make a particular decision on the matter. Council will consider the advice of the committee and the recommendation of staff, and then we'll make the final decision on the matter. Unlike with minor variances and consents, applications for zoning bylaw amendment, official plan amendment are subject to third-party appeal. So that's just something to note. Applications for draft plan of subdivision will be considered by both the committee and council, but the town does not make a decision on those on draft plans of subdivision. Those decisions are made by the county of Renfrew, and so what happens is staff provides a recommendation to the committee and to council. Council then provides comment through a resolution to the county of Renfrew. So those are generally the types of applications that you're going to see. There are other Planning Act applications that the committee will consider, and we'll kind of walk through those as we see them, but that generally covers the more common ones. So what typically happens is before we kind of open the floor up to members of the public, what I will do is provide just some recitals, just some statutory language that just kind of outlines the flow of the public meeting, rights to appeal, that kind of thing. How to appeal it, if a member of the public or the applicant or any eligible person wishes to appeal it. And then I'll follow that up with a staff report and a recommendation. I'll respond to any questions from the committee resulting from my presentation, and then we'll open the floor up to the applicant if they're in attendance. And then once the applicant has had an opportunity to address the committee, we'll then open the floor up to any other member of the public in attendance that wants to make any comments on the application. And we'll do that for each application as we kind of go through. We try to do these at the front of the meeting so that you don't have to sit through the rest of the agenda. You can leave after the matter's been dealt with if you'd like. Okay? So that's kind of the flow. What I'll do is I'll start just by just reading a few recitals here. So if you'll just bear with me, I already noted this is a meeting of the committee, a hearing of the Committee of Adjustment for the Town of Renfrew. The members have been appointed by council in order to make decisions with respect to applications for minor variance and consents in accordance with the Planning Act. For tonight's hearing, each application on the agenda, the owner and/or agent will be given the opportunity, if desired, to briefly explain to the committee the nature of their application, to answer any questions that may arise. All members of the public who wish to speak in favor or in opposition will have the opportunity to do so, following the presentation by the owner or the agent. I'll also note that anyone speaking at the hearing, including the applicant and any members of the public, must state their full name and address for the record. And any materials that you submit, either orally or written or otherwise, will be retained by the committee, and they form part of the public record. They can be made available at any point in any form deemed appropriate. As I've noted, the committee can choose to approve with or without conditions, refuse, or can hold an application in abeyance, which means that they're just going to consider it at a future meeting subject to additional information. Anyone who wants a copy of the committee's decision, even with minor variance applications, even though there's no right to appeal for minor variances, you have to make a written request to the Secretary Treasurer or the clerk. You just make sure you get it into the town in writing with a requesting a notice of the decision. And in the event that there are any appeals to the committee's decision, the names and the contact information of all persons requesting notice of decision will be provided to the Ontario Land Tribunal for giving notice related to the appeal to anyone who's eligible. Okay, so we will issue written notice of the decision of the committee on variances and consents no later than 10 days following the committee's decision for minor variances and 15 days for consents. It'll be mailed to the applicant, their agents, or any other person who's filed a written request. The last day for filing appeals will be included on the notice of decision. Appeals have to be filed within 20 days of the date of the notice of decision. In each case, the notice of appeal has to set out the reasons for the appeal and has to be accompanied by the prescribed appeal fee. If no appeal is received within the 20 days, the decision of the committee is final and binding, and the Secretary Treasurer will then notify the applicant, and then they can proceed to obtain building permits with respect to the proposal. Appeals, again, they should be submitted. They have to be submitted in writing. They should be submitted to the attention of the Secretary Treasurer, myself. They can be submitted to the clerk as well. That's fine. During regular business hours, or you can mail it to the town's mailing address, 127 Raglan Street South, Renfrew, Ontario, K7V 1P8. And so with respect to the Committee of Adjustment matters, I'll confirm that proper notice for all matters was given in accordance with the Planning Act. So those are the recitals. If it's okay, Chair, I'll just go through the staff report now, and then we can kind of address any questions. So the minor variance application on the agenda this evening is with respect to lands known municipally as 611 Liscar Avenue. The application, the owner is Jeff Karen, who is the president of 1686912 Ontario Inc. So I think most people would know this as Yokalski's lumber and scrapyard. There's a number of different industrial and commercial and actually some non-conforming residential uses on the property. Mr. Karen, he's asking for, he's built a structure like this in the past just for shelter, for wood products and other materials. And what he's requesting is an increase in the maximum accessory building or structure height from 4.5 meters, which is just the across-the-board maximum in the zoning bylaw, regardless of the zone or the use. He'd like to be able to go up to 6 meters, around about 20 feet. Okay. I've attached Appendix A showing the plan. The structure he's proposing is shown as structure number 13. It's about 234 square meters in area, and it's well set back from most of the lot lines. It maintains at the very least the minimum setback from the lot line that it's kind of closest to there. In terms of just screening, buffering, it's going in a location where if you've been out to the site, there's cars stacked like 2 or 3 high. So it'll be an improvement for sure. There's a 10-foot fence along that property line, and there's a row of conifers in the location that they're going to put it that are, in my estimation, between 20 and 30 feet high, and they'll certainly provide quite a bit of visual screening and buffering just for the benefit of the residents at 685 Liscar Avenue. We haven't received any objections in writing as of the date of this hearing. So we're not aware of any concerns that have been, unless of course there are any being delivered orally today in respect to this particular proposal. The subject lands themselves are quite large, over 10 acres in area. about 780 feet of road frontage on Liscar. As I noted, there's a mix of uses. The property is serviced by municipal water and sewer. There's also private well and septic. Surrounding land uses, they're generally consistent with the character of this property, generally industrial in nature with some non-conforming residential. So I guess with respect to minor variances, what I'll just for the committee's benefit, I won't go through this every time, but there's always 4 tests that we got to look at when it comes to minor variance applications. They're established by Section 45. Okay, it has to be minor, and we typically don't evaluate that in numerical terms. We evaluate that in terms of typically impact. So just because something is a small request numerically doesn't mean it's not going to have a significant impact. And conversely, just because someone's requesting quite a significant reduction doesn't mean that there's going to be a significant impact, right? So we got to look at, is it minor in terms of impact? Is it desirable for the appropriate development and use of the land? So we typically look at what they're looking to do with the structure, or with what they're proposing, and whether that's considered to be appropriate for the development of the land. And in consideration of adjacent lands as well. And then it has to meet the general intent and purpose of the official plan and the zoning bylaws. So if you add it up, those are 4 tests. Those are the 4 tests that are applied to every minor variance application that will be before you for your term. So when we look at this application, we applied the 4 tests. Staff are satisfied that the request is minor from 4.5 to 6, and again, considering the buffering and screening, we're satisfied that it's appropriate for the development and use of the property in consideration that it's an industrial property. It's going to help the business continue to function. We're not anticipating kind of any adverse impacts. It might be visible, the structure itself. It's 20 feet high. I think it's going to be an improvement, certainly, to the kind of the current status of the property, which is just kind of a bit, it'll help to provide some more organization, additional storage, and that kind of thing. So that's all good. And again, we're satisfied that it meets the general intent and purpose of the official plan, the zoning bylaw. It is designated industrial. It is zoned industrial. M2, the highest form of industrial use in the town. So we have no issues with respect to conformity with the official plan, the zoning bylaw. So with that all in mind, we are satisfied it meets the 4 tests. We are recommending approval, and we've not recommended any conditions of approval in this case. So those are my comments on the application and the report, and I'd be happy to respond to any questions from the committee at this time. And then if the applicant were here, Mr. Karen has advised me he's just unable to make it. He's a pretty busy guy. It's kind of the middle of the business day for him, so he's not able to make it. But if there are any specific questions that I'm not able to answer, I can relay those back to him and get some answers for the committee. So and then we'll open it up to the public.
Any questions from the floor? Are there any questions from the members of the public for this particular case? Okay, can you come to the table, please, sir?
On the mic, just make sure to press the button. It should be red, so just press it so it turns green. That way your question's heard online.
My question is, I walked not on the property, but the existing trail that is used by the snowmobilers and the walking path. On the edge of the property, and I'm going to say south of the property, there is a area that is, I don't think, properly drained. It seems to have a hole there, and the area that we're talking about has been backfilled by the individual applying for the minor variance. Where can you tell me would that drain water drain out of this hole? Because he also has a wrecking yard which has battery acid, oils, coolants, and everything else that can flow from that property that might flow to that hole. My concern is the contamination that may exist there.
Director Withers, I'll get you to answer that in a second. Sir, we just need your name and your address for the record, please.
I'm sorry, my
That's
name
okay.
is David Stewart. I live at 421 Lisgar, and I do walk in the area, and this is one thing I noticed walking in that area from the old existing KP tracks. So this is my concern for that property being industrial use. It may not be considered as wood storage, but because the property is industrial and it does have scrap cars as mentioned in your presentation, my concern is coolant from the wrecking yard, battery acids, oils, whatever may exist with the wrecking yard, is my concern that this area may be contaminated and, if not properly addressed, could have contamination to the two premises along Lisgar before the K&P tracks cross.
Thank you, sir. And go ahead, Director.
Yes, thank you, and thank you, Mr. Stewart, for your comments. It's an existing use. It's an established use. So, unfortunately, we're not evaluating, the presence of the existing use, and understandably, just because of its nature, there is the potential for, fluids leaking and whatnot. I'm not an expert on the operation of the wrecking yard. It might be a question that's more appropriate for Mr. Karen, and depending on your comfort level, I might be able to put you in touch with him to kind of discuss some of these questions. He might be able to. He'll probably be better equipped to respond to them. To be perfectly honest with you. Yeah. So I guess with respect to this application. So it's an application for an accessory structure. So we're not considering whether this use is, should continue or can continue. It's legally able to continue. So we've got to kind of focus our deliberations and our discussions on the merits of the accessory structure, not necessarily the merits of the land use itself. So that would just kind of be my. Is kind of my caution on that. So not kind of disputing or dismissing the question. I think it's a valid question, but it's not something that is really germane to this particular application, but something that if it's okay, I might be able to put you in touch with Mr. Karen to kind of get that information for you. Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions from the public? Any other questions from council?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much, Mr. Stewart, for coming to committee today to bring your concerns forward at this medium. I'm assuming you came here today because you've exhausted all other options, and that's why you're coming here today. I have to agree with Director Withers and what he says, that your concerns do not have anything to do with this application today. However, I have taken some notes on your concerns, and I will follow up with you. If you want to get a hold of me, I'll follow up with you, because I too am concerned about what you're seeing, and we just want to make sure everything's A-okay out there. And there are other options that we possibly could do, and I just want to thank you for bringing that up today to this committee. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Dick. And we have a motion to move forward with this. Mover?
I'll go ahead and read the motion first, actually.
Thank you.
No problem. Okay, so that the matter of the application for the minor variance file D1355 submitted by Jeff Caron for 1686912 Ontario Inc. with respect to the lands known municipally as 611 Lisgar Avenue, roll number being 4748000701630, to facilitate the construction of an accessory storage building. A variance from zoning bylaw 46-2010 as amended be granted in accordance with the submitted application by granting the following relief. And stipulation being section 5.2.2E, increase the maximum accessory building or structure height from 4.5 meters to 6 meters.
And Councillor Dick, you're the mover on this one still? Thank you. I got to get used to the terminology. Do we have this carried?
All in favor?
All in favor? Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to go out of committee of
And we're about to exit the Committee of Adjustment, and we need a motion to come out of it. So do we have a mover? And carried. Thank you. That was the Councillor Sobolski, and it's moved. Okay, we're moving into the zoning bylaw application. EDPT 23-0204, that the Economic Development Planning and Tourism Committee resolve into a public meeting for a zoning bylaw amendment application. Do we have a mover, please? Councillor Dick. And carried. And the next one was bylaw number 14146 with regard to Sydney Avenue. Go ahead, Director, please.
Thank you, Chair McDonald. So I've got a few recitals to read with respect to this public meeting. So whereas with the previous application disposed of by the Committee of Adjustment, a decision was just made on the matter. In this case, the committee, the Economic Development Planning and Tourism Committee, is going to make a recommendation to council. It will then rise to council at a future meeting. And then council will make the decision, and then we will issue a notice of decision following council's decision on the matter, and then they would pass a bylaw at that meeting and whatnot, and then the same appeal period would apply, the 20-day appeal period. So I'll go ahead and I'll read the recitals. So anyone present at a public meeting may submit their comments or concerns in respect of any proposed zoning bylaw or proposed amendments thereto. Any and all comments and information submitted, whether orally in writing, including identifying information, again, becomes part of the public record. It can be made publicly available at any point, including on the town's website. Anyone can obtain any additional information relating to these applications by contacting the Department of Planning and Development at Town Hall, 127 Raglan Street South in Renfrew between 8 a.m. and 4 p.m. Monday to Friday. If a person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the Corporation of the Town of Renfrew in respect of a proposed zoning bylaw or amendments thereto, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal a decision of the county or of the council to the Ontario Land Tribunal. All that means is that in order to appeal a decision, you have to be involved in the process, and the Planning Act defines involvement in the process as you either submit written comments before the decision's made or you submit oral comments at the public meeting. So those are the criteria in order to be eligible. If a person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the Corporation of the Town of Renfrew in respect of a proposed zoning bylaw or amendments thereto, the person or public body may not be added as a party to the hearing of an appeal before the Ontario Land Tribunal, unless in the opinion of the tribunal there are reasonable grounds to do so. If you wish to be notified of the decision of the Corporation of the Town of Renfrew in respect of this matter, you have to make, again, a written request to the town planner or the clerk, or just make sure it gets to the town of Renfrew, 127 Raglan Street South, Renfrew, Ontario, K7V1P8. A person or public body may file an appeal with the Ontario Land Tribunal within 20 days of the issuance of the notice of decision. The person or public body has to submit the appeal to the town, which includes an explanation of the reasons for objecting to the decision, in addition to paying the required fees set out by the Ontario Land Tribunal Act. So there's a form and there's a fee. The fee, I believe, is $400, payable by a certified check or bank draft. If you would like to speak at a public meeting this evening, you're asked to provide your name and address for the record. Again, to ensure you can be contacted in the event of an appeal, you're asked to provide your contact information via the chat function. There's no chat function anymore. I'm going to just get rid of that from my statement because we're
You forgot to update your sheet.
hopefully past all that by now. Okay, so those are the statutory comments. I will kind of go through the staff report here and describe the proposal, and then we can open the floor up. Okay, so this is indeed file number D14146, being a application for a zoning bylaw amendment with respect to lands, unaddressed lands located on Sydney Avenue at the terminus of Sydney Avenue, roll number 4748000040028001. The proposal is to rezone the lands which are currently zoned as environmental protection, to rezone them to provide for a building envelope on the subject lands. And the site plan that's submitted with the application is available as Appendix B to the report. The plan does indeed show the building envelope outside of the required environmental and slope stability setbacks. So with this application, the applicant was required to basically to even consider this as a possibility. There's a number of things that have to happen. So you have to have a total of 3 reports completed in order to have this application considered. So planning justification report has to deal with all the policy requirements, provincial, county, and town policy. And then related to that, an environmental impact statement to evaluate the impact of development on the environmental protection lands. Environmental protection lands are generally they're zoned that way anytime you have a potential, not necessarily an actual, but at least the potential for a protected natural heritage feature or a natural hazard. So in this case, the potential, when you have a ravine in the town of Renfrew, you almost always have to evaluate it for slope stability because we have high potential for slip clays, which is essentially a type of soil that when put under load is prone to failure. So, and it's happened a few times. I'm aware of a situation in the town of Arnprior. There's lots of houses built real close to ravines in the town of Renfrew, probably closer than, by today's standards. That's just what happens 100 years ago. We don't know these things, right? So, but moving forward, we do ask and require that it's demonstrated that the hazard can be mitigated or that it doesn't exist in any setbacks. So the draft bylaw attached as Appendix A to the report, I'll just open it up here. So you've got the text of the amendment, which essentially rezones it to a portion of the lands outside of the hazard lands and environmental lands, as determined by the supporting studies. It rezones those lands to R1 with a holding symbol, and I'll explain that in a minute. And then everything outside of that will remain environmental protection. So on at the very last page of Appendix A, you have the map schedule change. So you can see that there's a kind of a rectangle with a kind of a semicircle cut out of it, and that semicircle reflects the limit of hazard for the slope as determined by the geotechnical engineer, as well as incorporating the recommended natural heritage buffer from the biologist that was submitted with this application. Just going down here. So just in terms of the property itself, it's about 1/4 of an acre in area. It has about 30 meters of frontage on Sydney Avenue. It's currently vacant. Obviously, it's got the ravine to the north. You've kind of got a gradual slope. Then kind of when you get closer to the ravine, it does start to dip. So one of the elements of the geotechnical evaluation is determining what's called the stable top of bank is, and you kind of determine kind of a limit of hazard from there. So a setback from the stable top of bank to make sure that you don't have failure. So that's what the rezoning area reflects. It reflects that setback. The property is serviced by, does have availability of water and sewer services. However, it's still kind of to be determined whether or not the existing services are adequate or whether there are going to need to be some upgrades. So that's still being considered by the engineering department. We are recommending that if council does go ahead with this rezoning, we are recommending that they do go ahead with it, but if they do go ahead with it, it'll be under what's called a holding provision. And a holding provision basically says that we can't issue any building permits until the holding provision is lifted. And the lifting of the holding provision can only happen once the set of criteria listed in the bylaw are met. So again, if you refer back to Appendix A being the draft zoning bylaw amendment, you'll see under item 3, you'll see the rezoning to the R1H. You'll see the permitted uses that are permitted while the holding is on, which are essentially anything that's existing, open space, passive recreation. And then you'll see under II, the conditions for removal of the holding symbol. So the first condition is confirmation of adequate water and sanitary services are available for residential development. The second condition is site plan approval, including registration of a site plan agreement against the title of the lands for the purposes of implementing the recommendations of the submitted environmental impact statement and slope stability assessment. So what the site plan approval will do is it will include an agreement, as it notes here, and the agreement will require compliance with the studies. So it'll say that they agree to be bound by all of the recommendations of the studies submitted in support of the application. That'll be registered on title and it will run with the lands. So not only the current owner of the land, but any future purchaser of the land can't claim ignorance, right? It's registered on title. They're bound by the agreement in perpetuity. So those are the two conditions. Once those two criteria, the servicing and the site plan approval, are met, they can then apply to have the H lifted, and then a building permit can be issued. Nothing changes outside of just the fact that the H is gone, and we can now issue a permit within that R1 zone. So with zoning bylaw amendments, official plan amendments, draft plans of subdivision, basically any planning act matter outside of minor variances, which again, minor variances are 4 tests, and it's always the 4 tests. All the other ones, you have to go through all the policy. You start from the top and go all the way down. You start from the provincial policy statement, the planning act, the provincial policy statement, then you go down to the county official plan, then you go down to the town of Renfrew official plan, you look at the zoning bylaw, and the application has to be consistent with and conform to all the policy. So as I've noted, the applicants have been required to submit a planning justification report as one of their studies, and the purpose of the planning justification report is to address all that policy, okay? And to be frank, we don't get to this point without us being satisfied that they've met the requirements, right? So you're generally not going to see an application unless an applicant is just, bound and determined to get their, 15 minutes in front of the committee, at the risk of the strong likelihood of refusal. Outside of that, anything you see before committee is going to have been vetted, screened out, and we're going to generally be satisfied. Most of our reports are going to be recommending approval. That doesn't mean that we don't look at anything or that, we just approve everything like people generally assume. That's just the image impression that people get. The reality is we vet things throughout the whole process, okay? So we are recommending approval of this application. We're satisfied that it's consistent with, conforms with the applicable policy. And we're recommending that the committee recommend to council that the zoning bylaw amendment be approved. So those are my comments on the application. If there are any questions from the committee, and then we can open the floor up to the applicant and any members of the public in attendance. Okay.
Any questions from the council there? No? Is there anyone here for the members of the public that wants to talk to this? Mr. Stewart, come on up again.
Just a reminder, Mr. Stewart, just to state your name and your address again for the record. Thank you.
My name is David Stewart. I live at 421 Lisgar Street. I own the property at 369 Sydney. Listening to Mr. Withers there, I didn't get the applicant's name on the property amendment. is that,
I can do that for you now. It's
Okay.
Mr. Bowden's of Vonrich
okay?
is the
and-
registered owner.
And he currently lives at 253 McLean Street.
It's definitely McLean Street. I'll check the number really quick.
Okay.
I believe, yeah, you're probably correct.
Okay. Some history on the property, and I'm just going to get some
Yeah.
information out there. The property was originally owned by the town, and they see no use for the property back a number of years ago. And I got this from one of the previous landowners. The property was divided up between 245 Sydney and 253 McLean. I'm thinking it's Sydney, it might be McLean. They divided that property to each of those owners on McLean. The gentleman at 245 did not want the property, so he gave his portion to 253 McLean. And that property was owned by Mr. Gilmore. Mr. Gilmore, a number of years ago, made much the same application as this one. And the overall outcome was many different things. He did the application in 2010. It was zoned residential low density, zoning bylaw number 5590. He had applied for residential dwelling on subject land for use permit R1 zoning. On September 22nd, 2010, the zoning bylaw was going to be changed to 46/2010. It became environmental, the subject land became environmentally protected. Zoning bylaw number 46/2010. No new buildings or structure other than for flood or erosion controlled are permitted within any EP zoning. Therefore, the above noted land was not zoned appropriately to permit a building. The zoning as a subject land does not permit the construction of any building. Therefore, the assessment value of the land should be reconsidered to be similar to or less than the assessed value of the property as existed prior to the original severance of 2010. I have a photocopy of a Planning and Development Department comment from the town of Renfrew. A portion of the newly created land as zoned as environmental protection under zoning bylaw 46/2010. G technical consultant that the new lot is unsuitable to build upon. The planning and development comment, the lot, the building permit for 21, the application, the lot was zoned as EP. G technical studies would be required. A qualified professional engineer to demonstrate a building could be safely built on the lot. The applicant retained a professional engineer and has found that the soil is unsuitable for building a residential dwelling unit. Based on the size of land that is appropriated and the setbacks and the way the geological land lies, it is, in my opinion, a building hazard at any point. Martin Street, which goes behind McLean Street, flows into a ravine that drains into the Ottawa River. These lands are unstable for anybody to build on and could be a lawsuit to this town or to the individual. I feel that this application should be dismissed on these grounds. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Stewart. And I know, Director, I spoke to you earlier about the changes that sometimes take place within the bylaws and all that sort of thing. Could you address some of his issues there? Thank you.
Sure, and again, thank you for those thoughtful comments, Mr. Stewart. I really appreciate it. We'll sometimes just get folks showing up saying, "No, I don't like this." You've actually articulated some very, good comments. So thank you very much for your time, taking the time to do that. So I guess going back to 2010. The zoning bylaw, did change, and so kind of whatever was in place, under the previous bylaw, 5590, that's not really a consideration anymore. We're looking at 2010, and you're very right. The lands are presently zoned. You can't develop. You couldn't get a building permit today to build on that. As I noted, the applicant has been required to submit a number of documents in support of this application. So I can't really speak to the level of investigation that was done by the previous engineers that might have looked at this when the town was disposing of it. There's obviously different, there's different scales of assessment. All I can say is that we have a sealed opinion and evaluation of this slope by a duly qualified geotechnical engineer who has determined that there is a suitable building envelope on this. It's not a big one. It's definitely not. It's going to be tight. It's going to be not a big house, but that there is a suitable building envelope in their opinion, outside of not just the stable top of bank, but the limit of hazard setback. So that engineer will be assuming liability. That's the purpose of having engineers produce reports and designs. They are assuming the liability of that recommendation, and this will be those reports will be implemented through a site plan agreement, be registered on title. The obligations and the recommendations of those supporting studies will become obligations for both current and future owners of this property. So no one will be able to claim ignorance about what the studies are saying. So again, I can't really speak to kind of the previous assessment of the property. Clearly, qualified people have looked at it today and have determined based on their qualifications and the design requirements that exist today that there is a suitable building envelope. So that's what we're going based on. We're not making a recommendation just based on our hope that there won't be slope failure. We have required that they produce documentation prepared by qualified professionals. So I think that's probably the best I can do on that point. Hopefully I've addressed the question somewhat. Thank you.
Thank you, Director. Is there anyone else from the members of the public that want to speak towards this? No? Anyone from the, sorry, yes? Just come on up, please. And we'll need your name and the address. And just make sure your mic shows green there. Okay.
Yep. My name is Bowden Zvonrich. I'm the applicant. I live at 290 McAndrew. I also own 253 McLean Street, which this property butts up against. So it's mine. Eric Withers pretty well covered everything, so thanks for that. I just basically want to say thank you guys for taking your time and reviewing everything. I wasn't aware of the things said before, but I'm happy to converse after and discuss anything that needs to be. Feel free to bring anything to my attention. Appreciate this. I'm just looking to build a residential development on here within the safe areas that the new geotechnical studies said. Looking to promote the development and growth of the town of Renfrew, and hope that everything goes well here. So appreciate the time.
Thank you, sir. Anything from the councillors? Any questions?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Director Withers, just to clarify, because you use some pretty big words in there, and if anybody's watching online, I just bring it down to layman's terms. It's okay. So all the engineering has been done. Everything is good. The town's not liable if anything happens in years to come. Your department's recommending this. We're good to go by the sounds of it. I just want to clarify that. I'm sorry.
Yes, thank you, and through your chair, McDonald. So that's correct. Particularly in respect of the hazard lands and the potential for slope failure, I've covered our bases on that for sure. As I noted, the holding symbol is being recommended to deal with the water and sewer. There's not to say that there's not water and sewer there, but just in terms of it's a bit shallow. And it's low flow, so the engineers are still kind of chewing it over a little bit in terms of whether or not we should tie in another service to it. There's pros and cons to it. There's if you put more flow into it, it's possible to actually improve the function of it. So, but we'll see what they say. We'll leave it to the folks that are qualified in that regard. But yeah, certainly in regards to liability and that kind of thing, we've got the documentation in place. Thank you.
Thank you, Director. We'll move forward with a motion if there's no other questions from the members of the public or the councillors. The motion is that the Economic Development, Planning and Tourism Committee recommend Town Council approve application number D14-146, the zoning bylaw amendment, for lands located on the south side of Sydney Avenue, having roll number 47-48-000-035-02800. Do I have a mover, please? Councillor Sobalski, and is it carried? Thank you. A motion to move out of the public meeting, that the Economic Development, Planning and Tourism Committee adjourn from the public meeting. Mover, please. Councillor Sobalski, and carried. Thank you. And if you can orient your computers back to Section C, we're going to head back to Section C for presentations, delegations, and announcements. And I think, Deputy Clerk, you're running with the first one? Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I do have this up on the screen right here, and as we stated before, anybody watching from home, this information is in your agenda packages if you can't see it from the screen. So I'm just going to run briefly through kind of the terms and reference, the structure committee, and everything for the Economic Development, Planning and Tourism Committee. These terms of references were brought before Council and approved by Council on November 22nd. The following members of Council that are appointed to this committee specifically are Councillor John McDonald, who's the chair, Councillor Kyle Sobalski, and Councillor Andrew Dick, and Mayor Tom Sidney. And then the recording secretary is myself, Carolyn Arrett. The main staff lead is Director Eric Withers. And then additional staff support that you'll see from time to time come into the committee will be Chief Building Official Tom Webster, the Economic Development Officer Dan Lavender, and the Administration Assistant Ashley Rathwell. And then again, also from time to time, we have our Communications and Marketing Jenna McEwen and our Clerk Victoria Charbonneau. So the meeting structure itself, so the Economic Development and Planning and Tourism Committee will meet the first Tuesday of every month, starting at 2 p.m. This is for the regular meeting schedule. That's not to say that the chair can't call a special meeting if the need arises, but we'd like to try to keep to the regular schedule, which again is the first Tuesday of every month. And the meeting will take place here at the council chambers at the town hall office and will be broadcast on the town YouTube channel. All meetings are open to the public for anybody who wishes to come and view the meeting. Any delegations do need to put in a request to the recording secretary, which again is myself, at least a week and a half before the scheduled meeting. The agenda template, everybody kind of has a rough idea of what it looks like. We'll start every meeting with a call to order and the land acknowledgement. There's opportunity for the declaration of any interest. Presentation, delegations, and announcements, reports being divided up between planning, building, and economic development, any communications and petitions, the approval of minutes, any upcoming meetings, and then adjournment. The committee will not move into a closed session. Any closed session items will go directly to council. And then just to kind of give a rough breakdown of what each of those items on the agenda kind of represent. Presentation is something that's being brought forward by staff or a member of a council who wants to kind of present to the committee itself. A delegation is a third-party attendee wishing to address the committee, and that's if there's a matter that they want to bring forward, a concern, a comment that doesn't kind of include like the public meeting format that we had today. That's part of the Planning Act, but delegation is something somebody wants to bring a matter directly to this committee. Announcements are kind of quick, easy, often hopefully feel goods, something that we just want to bring forward, so that can be brought forward by staff or chair or committee members. Correspondence is anything that is either coming from an outside source or information we need to pass along, so sometimes something from the ministry. Reports are kind of broken down from either staff reports, something arising or action that needs to be taken, capital summary updates, key statistics. So you'll see a number of those reports come forward. In matter of this committee specifically, that'll also include planning reports like we had today. So overall, the mandate of this committee, the Economic Development, Planning and Tourism Committee provides direction on all planning and building matters in accordance with the town's official plan, zoning bylaw, community improvement plan, and the Ontario Building Code, and applicable county and provincial policy and legislation. The committee has a primary focus on increasing the supply of all types of housing in the town of Renfrew, including affordable housing, and attracting and facilitating non-residential development. The committee also provides guidance towards identifying corporate economic development goals, including tourism. So I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about all this. Anybody who watched earlier knows that I'm going to skip through. These are kind of the general duties of the committee. They are attached in the agenda package for further kind of more in-depth review. Again, these were passed by council back in November, and it just gives an outline of what matters will be brought forward to the committee and kind of information that we deal with on a regular basis. So general responsibility is the budget matters that are considered part of the departments listed, previously talked about. Anything recommendations being brought forward with regards to planning policies, planning applications, delegations that are obviously specific to the areas that we talked about in planning, building, as well as tourism and economic development. This committee will also serve as the committee of adjustment to hear specific planning matters, again, like we saw today. And then we go into a little bit more in depth about each specific role with the planning and building, which again are matters with regards to applications, building permits, the statistics from those, any policies coming from both the county as well as provincial, development charges, affordable housing, corporate real estate, and sorry, I think that last one was supposed to be economic development and tourism. Wrong title change. So I know I skipped through that pretty fast. The information is available in the agenda packages. If anybody has any questions related to the roles and responsibility of the committee, they can certainly talk to myself or Chair McDonald, and we can kind of help you out with that.
Thank you, Deputy Clerk. And I think Clerk Charbonneau is up next with the Roots in Renfrew presentation.
I will get that. Branding.
Great. Thank you, Chair McDonald. So as my colleague EDO Dan Lavager is away today, I'm presenting this report or pretty much just giving a highlight for a report that was presented as when I was on tenure as EDO prior to becoming clerk. So the attached presentation is simply an overview of the three-pronged branding strategy that we undertook in beginning of 2022, and that's almost at completion with our website to be launched in March. So just to give committee a background on the project, I will run through a few slides. So the town of Renfrew, we currently have a website, and it's got a lot of pages, it's got a lot of information condensed in amongst a lot of municipal information with marketing information and economic development information. It was brought to my attention when I was on some courses for economic development that in order to entice and engage growth, it's better served to have an economic development standalone website. So with that idea in mind, a report was brought forth to council, and we presented the following. So we had a three-pronged marketing approach, and what that included was a new stock of photos being taken. It also included a website being developed that was strategically aligned to economic development and tourism principles, and also a new branding initiative. So for economic development to have its own signature brand. And in February of 2022, Council did approve the branding project, as you can see here on the slide, at a total cost of $26,218, and that's inclusive of non-refundable HST. So that was the cost all in. And then to break down the funding, roughly $16,000 was brought forth from the Modernization Fund, and then the rest was absorbed by the Economic Development Operating Budget. And just for some background on modernization funding, this was a fund provided by the province of Ontario to help small municipalities increase efficiencies and modernize service delivery. So it fit in the envelope quite nicely. So a breakdown of the budget you can see up there. I broke it down for each of the three marketing approaches. So the website had a cost of total cost of roughly $14,000. The logo and branding, roughly $5,000, and video, photo, and short promotional videos, roughly $6,000, for a total at the bottom, as you can see there. And on to the next slide, we have just a very simple project timeline. Now, there are a lot of activities encompassed in each of these. There's a lot of moving parts to each of these three initiatives. They are separate. They're all done by separate companies. As you can see there, we have the logos. So Candice Bell Productions is doing our photo and video shorts. She's been working hard on these since we were approved by council. The whole premise of this was to have Candice Bell Productions go to Renfrew signature events and capture Renfrew in various different seasons, different activities that we are most proud of and that are most used here. So Candice Bell Productions has curated a number of great photos that have already been used on our social media. We've got video shorts that we've used for promotional endeavors, and as well the showcase and the highlight of these promo videos and photography will be seen on the Economic Development and Tourism website when it's launched. They are fantastic. I can't wait for committee and council to see them and have the public view them as well. They're great. They're updated and they showcase more than just nature. They're people doing things, what we do here in Renfrew. They're using the trails. They're tobogganing. They're at signature events. They're at the farmers market. So it's really a really good synopsis of life here in Renfrew. As well, EDO, Lavager, and Miss Bell are currently working on getting some industry shots for our just our main industries here, so we can see a lot of our business side, which we have not been able to capture in full. So they'll come into fruition with the launch of the website, and they'll be able to be utilized for years to come. So it's something good and something new that we haven't had yet. Moving on, in November, just moving on in the timeline. Got a little excited about the photos there. So Sweeney Creations, they did our logo and branding, which was launched in November. That's Roots in Renfrew, so I'm sure everyone's seen that. It's fantastic. I'm going to leave the details of that for when the overall branding strategy is presented in March. There's a lot of cool factors that went into the branding and a lot of hard work from Sweeney Creations and staff here. So we can speak to that more when the branding strategy is unveiled in total. But as you can see, we've got our Roots in Renfrew and our tagline, "Make it your town." That's our call to action. It works tourism-wise and business-wise, but that's just a snapshot of the logo and branding that was launched. And then lastly, March 2023 is when the actual website will be launched, and that was done by Social. They're a highly regarded, really modern marketing and media website development firm. And the team there is hard at work. We are very close to finalizing all of the elements there. We've seen a preview. It's excellent. It serves both separately and together the economic needs and then also the tourism needs. They are two different focuses, and you'll see when the website's launched, they're really accented together nicely, but also have their standalone websites. So it's very modern. It's something like no other municipality has around here, so it will really set Renfrew apart. Next slide, please. So just a little breakdown and highlight for the project. As I said, there's a lot of moving parts to all of those three different marketing prongs. We had a number of deliverables ascertained at the beginning of the project, and they're highlighted here. So number one, first and foremost, was the creation of a standalone marketing website. This is going to be the place where people who are interested in tourism, business owners, site selectors go and have a focused look on either economic development needs or tourism and living in Renfrew needs. So again, you have here, our photos will be showcased in all of their fullness here on the website, as well as with the video and promotional shorts of certain festivals. And there's also, Renfrew will have its very own promotional commercial, which is very exciting and very dynamic. So that's going to be a showstopper on the website. Also, there is a community profile, which has now morphed into a investment insights tab. So this is using some very modern, cutting edge economic development statistical software, and this pulls directly from a number of resources to provide users with up-to-date and live statistics on Renfrew workforce, economic indicators, so on and so forth. So very handy for both the EDO role and economic development purposes. And lastly, we're going to have some maps integrated into the website, and this will be in real time to showcase local businesses and promote and have it done at a very limited staff input time. So it's all done on its own and without staff having to sit there and pour hours and hours into a website. Next slide, please. So the deliverables continued. So this is our custom logo. Again, you can see that the branding package includes a custom logo and font, color palette, social media branded images, and page setup. We use Canva for a lot of our marketing material. So in this, with this package here, what was done is, it's not just a logo. There's colors, there's templates that bleed into our website, that bleed into our marketing. So it's now a cohesive strategy that you may not notice off the bat, but when you're used to seeing this branded logo and the strategy that accompanies it, you'll see that economic development in Renfrew has all of these colors, and people start to associate the colors with our brand. So it's really starting to solidify economic development and tourism as its own brand. And then video and photo and our short film projects. You'll see here we have a number of videos that highlight various things in town that we can use moving forward on our website, other promotional activities. Again, it's just very modern. It makes us appear dynamic and willing to grow and attract people, and we're just trying to keep with the current standards of social media and websites from larger areas that, you know, are able to attract and sustain growth. So we have an even playing field with these offerings, and it really showcases Renfrew in its best light. And then the next slides are just a showcase of some of the materials that you'll see. Really nice up-to-date photos of the trail, people on snowmobiles utilizing a number of amenities in Renfrew. And again, they're good not only for promotional stuff, but it's also good to for our marketing and communications officer and the jobs that she does on her daily task. It helps solidify a brand and create Renfrew as a standalone entity, and it entices people to come here, stay here, and visit here often. And that's the overview in a nutshell. It's been a labor of love for many months. We've really enjoyed working on it. Jenna McEwen and myself were lucky enough to have the support of the previous council to engage in this. It's something very unique to Renfrew up until this point. So we were happy to have the support of council, and we're really proud of the products that you'll see, and they'll serve our town for years to come.
Thank you very much. Any questions from council, or go ahead, Councillor Dick?
Through you, Mr. Chair, this question is for Clerk Charbonneau. I just really only have one question. You answered a lot of my questions through your presentation, which was well presented. Thank you very much. And I'm not looking at you because it's kind of awkward to talk. That's why I'm not looking at you. I just have one question. So the price, like we did a website development, we did logo and brand, and then we did videos, photos, and short, okay? I just want to know, was there a bidding process? How does that work? So you needed 3 different things. You needed website, logo and brand, videos, and photos. Did you do a bidding process, or was it more or less you just went out and kind of found someone or someone in your staff? I just wanted to know how that process was done.
Sure. So through you, Chair McDonald, due to the dollar points that you see with the total cost through the procurement bylaw that was present at the time, we were able to sole source based on the dollar value.
So sole source means someone in your staff just went out and picked a company, hired them, and that was it?
Correct.
Any other questions? Nope. Thank you very much, Clerk Charbonneau. And I think, Jenna, you're next with signature events. And just for everyone, we're going back up to the D section, D3, for signature events. And there shall be a motion that the Economic Development, Planning and Tourism Committee recommend Renfrew Town Council approve the proposed direction. Nope, I'm on the wrong one. Stand by. And I shall continue. That Town Council approve the proposed direction for the Bluegrass Festival and its structure. And at this point, Jenna, do you talk, and then we take over after, right? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair McDonald. So I'm here to present the report for the future of the Bluegrass Festival. We have put together a report based on past experiences with the events, and after significant chats with the Signature Events Working Group, which was put together basically to discuss the future of town events and how to build on the success of previous events. Dan Levager, the Economic Development Officer, has put this report together. Unfortunately, he can't be here, so I'm going to present it on his behalf. Essentially, this report kind of details previous events that have been held here in the town of Renfrew. Essentially, the 2022 Bluegrass Festival that returned after a 2-year hiatus due to COVID-19. We have kind of revisited the structure of the event in hopes of building it and growing and making it more of an annual event that will bring people in from all over. The Bluegrass Festival was always a very successful festival. It ran for 3 years. However, after its first return back in 2022, we did see a significant decline in both attendance and revenues after previous years. So we kind of brought to the table the idea of revamping the music festival in an effort to grow its attendance, its audience base, and kind of create a more successful event for future years. Essentially, what we would like to do, the framework for this festival in the past was very successful. We've run it for years. It was held at the Johnson Farm in years prior. It always was very successful. However, with the return of events this year, one of our biggest successes was the Renfrew Craft and the Craft Beer and Food Truck Festival. So essentially what we are looking at is using the framework that we implemented for the Craft Beer and Food Truck Festival towards the Bluegrass Festival in an effort to kind of revamp and open up and broaden the different types of people that would be attending the festival. So we're looking at some format changes. We're looking at some the music changes in there, the elimination of camping in order to kind of reduce staff time, expenditures, and liability, and essentially reduce it to a 2-day format that would mean more revenue and a lot less liability and expenditures on the town's behalf. So that's basically where we're at right now. In closing, the recommendation is for this to be approved by committee going forward. However, I'm here and happy to answer any questions that anyone might have about the report.
Any questions from council?
Through you, Chair.
Councillor Kyle Sobalski, go ahead. Paper, scissors.
Just to understand, I understand the idea of combining things. I love it. It's always the best way to get 2 groups into one alley. But you mentioned getting rid of camping, and we're talking about bringing more booze, more beer to the venue, but yet we don't really have a place for people to stay. I'm just curious if that's, you got some good fundamentals behind that, or what was the cost impact of camping?
So essentially what we're looking at this year, the camping was a fairly large liability for the town. It required an excessive amount of staff time, security, all the rest of it, and essentially didn't really bring a lot of revenue to the table. So what we're doing this year, we're actually in talks with transportation companies that would bring people in buses from Pembroke, Arnprior, and locally here in Renfrew in an effort to reduce any transportation that anyone might be doing and safely transport people back and forth. With the purchase of a ticket, we are asking people to indicate whether or not they require a bus seat, in which case it would transport them back to wherever their vehicles are. And we're actually in talks with different amenities in the different towns to see whether or not they would offer a reduced rate to people who are attending and offer the ability for them to park their vehicles at the location. So that's one thing that was a big factor for us. It is for any event that you bring in like this, craft beer as well. So you really want to make sure that you're putting out safe options for people. We're also working with local authorities to ensure that there isn't any drinking and driving leaving our location.
Thank you. I may have another question later.
Councillor Andrew Dick, go ahead, please.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Through you. Great presentation. Super excited about this new change. So this, just because my brain didn't understand, so the craft beer festival that was downtown, you're now going to move that out to Mattaway into a 2-day festival.
Thank you very much, and through you, Chair McDonald. So essentially, the Craft Beer and Food Truck Festival was kind of revived this year with a huge focus on local talent. With that, in a matter of just over 8 hours, we saw over 2,000 people attend the site here, and a great revenue for all of the beer sales as well. And we feel like one of the biggest draws for that was kind of revisiting how the festival was set up and a more focus on local entertainment that's going to bring in a bigger draw. The Craft Beer and Food Truck Festival will remain as it is in October. We are kind of using the framework from it to revise the Bluegrass Festival. we love bluegrass. It was a huge success. We don't want to eliminate it altogether, but we do really feel that there are ways that you can grow and improve on this festival. And essentially, because there is nothing even remotely close to this in Renfrew County, we're really hoping to make this Renfrew Music Festival an event that draws people in every year annually and grows every year. So we're using the framework of past bluegrass festivals with some of the revisions that we implemented for craft beer in order to try to grow this music festival as best we can.
That was awesome. Thank you. How do I address her, Mr. Chair? What's her title? Sorry, I was just going to thank her, and I was like, do I just Jenna?
Coordinator.
My title is very long, I will admit, Communications
Thank you.
and Marketing
Thank you,
Coordinator.
Coordinator McEwen. That was great. That excites me that we're keeping the beer fest and then moving on to something else. So I just want to make a public statement, and we all feel this, that we need this, and maybe Director Withers can help us down the future. We need another hotel, sir. And we'll just leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Mayor, did you want to say something?
Yeah, thank you. So just a bit of a, not necessarily more background, but with the signature events group, the working group that has come together, there's, I think there's 7 people. Anyway, 7 to 9 people. Some from the community, and I sat in on the first meeting because this is very exciting, and there's some very exciting news coming in the future. So I sat in on the meeting because it was decisions needed to be made quickly due to scheduling and stuff. So the entire working group was super excited, fully behind it. And I think it's going to be something that will turn into something very large over the next couple of years. I think the way that the economic development team is going at this is very thorough. It's going to be exciting, and I think when there's announcements made in the very near future, people will be happy and excited about it. So just everybody keep their eyes on social media and everything. We're working on how to launch this. Should it get sent in through council for the budget, but I'm hopeful, and it's something that Renfrew's needed for a long time. So yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Mayor. Any other questions? And I sat in on that too, and that was, I like the energy that was in that meeting that day. So thank you, Jenna, Coordinator. We'll move on to, we have a motion to pass here. The Economic Development, Planning and Tourism Committee recommend Renfrew Town Council approve the proposed direction for the Bluegrass Festival and its structure. Do I have a mover, please? Thank you, Councillor Dick. And do we carry it? Thank you. And I think with the next one, as we move on to D3, Councillor Dick, you'll have to excuse yourself. Okay, and we'll just wait for that.
Yep.
Okay, at this point in time, Councillor...
Whenever it's, you gotta tell him it's refused when he comes back. That's
Can we not put that on record?
Okay, at this point in time, we'll have it noted that Councillor Dick has left the room, and we'll proceed with the D32, which is the rental of the parking lot. And it will be a motion as we move forward that the Economic Development, Planning and Tourism Committee recommend Renfrew Town Council approve rental of a portion of the One Innovation Drive parking lot for the use of a mobile fireworks sales container, subject to the issuance of a transient trader license to RC Fireworks. And who's looking after the We're not moving it now, we're going into the details, I think. Eh? We're moving it. Thank you, Councillor Cebulski. And who's going to look after it? Okay, Director, thank you.
Thank you, and through you, Chair McDonald. So this is a request from Mr. Dick to essentially continue to rent a portion of the parking lot at One Innovation Drive. My understanding is it's been, he's done this before, that this is just a renewal of his request. He sells fireworks out of a kind of a retrofitted shipping container, which is pretty common. You've probably seen them all over the place, these Kaboom and different brands. So it's not an unusual request. What'll be required is a rental agreement with Mr. Dick. He'll also require a transient trader license, and then he'll be good to go. So this needs to rise to council because there's a bylaw associated with it, because there is an agreement with the town. So you'll make a recommendation, it'll rise to council, council will dispose of it, and then we'll proceed with any authority granted by council to enter into the agreement and issue the transient trader permit accordingly. If there are questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you. I just have one question, or do you want to add to it,
Sure,
CAO?
if I can add to this.
Yes.
If I may add just additional background since the request came through me, and I'm not sure I passed it on to the director. The former Industrial Commission did not charge this enterprise to use the parking lot, so this is the first time we're applying a charge. And I should note that we looked into an agreement. However, the transient trader license provides the necessary provisions, including insurance. So rather than doing an agreement and the license will cover off what is required for the operation, so an agreement will not be required, but the approval is conditional on the issuance of a transient trader license. So just to clarify those two things, because we were contemplating in an earlier version to do an agreement, but the licensing covers off the bases we need in terms of insurance. But this is the first time that the proponent will be charged for use of the space.
Thank you, CAO. And that was going to be my question, Director. What we're charging him, just for transparency for the public, is that in accordance with the current rates as far as you're comfortable with?
Yeah, so our objective with all of our town-owned properties is to collect market rate. We're not able to effectively subsidize business outside of prescribed abilities to do that, and they're very narrow circumstances. An example would be like the CIP, where the town can provide, the community improvement plan, the town can provide grants, for example, to businesses. Otherwise, we're required to rent at market rate, so $250 per week would be consistent with that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? No. Just out of curiosity, and whether it's to the CAO or the director, you talked about they're quite, you see them at the regular times of year at different areas. I know Pembroke, I think, had theirs out for a month. Is there any extension, or is that all he asked for? I'm just curious with regard to that timings.
Through you, Mr. Chair. The previous fire committee looked at the fireworks bylaw that provides some provisions on when fireworks can be sold. The clerk's team, which is responsible for licensing, is looking at a number of bylaws and will take up kind of what that draft bylaw looked like. So the requester is in keeping with the provisions of the fireworks bylaw. That being said, the fireworks bylaw probably needs some work, as do most of our licensing bylaws, and I know the clerk's team is preparing a report on some other aspects in terms of a work plan on looking at those bylaws over the coming months. So the request is in keeping with what is permitted under the bylaw.
Thank you very much. Okay, so we have the motion. I'll read it again. The Economic Development, Planning and Tourism Committee recommend Renfrew Town Council approve rental of a portion of the One Innovation Drive parking lot for the use of a mobile fireworks sales container, subject to the issuance of a transient trader license to RC Fireworks. We're running out of people to move this. Councillor Cebulski, thank you. And do we have it carried? Okay, thank you very much. Okay, we have, and just for transparency, Councillor Dick has come back into the room. So we have no, with regard to E, we have no communications and petitions. With regard to F, Section F, we have no committee minutes, and we're on to upcoming meetings and committees. The next regular scheduled meeting of the Economic Development Planning and Tourism Committee is scheduled for March 7th, 2023 at 2 p.m. Anything else to add, Clerk Charbonneau? Oh, sorry. Deputy Clerk Harrod.
No problem. Just for anybody who's looking at the agenda, a full meeting schedule is attached for reference. And again, re-emphasizing the fact that we will be meeting on a regular basis on the first Tuesday of every month, with the exception of July. And that schedule is attached in the agenda for reference.
Thank you, and we're adjourned. Any questions? Anyone? No, we're adjourned at 3:31. Thank you, everyone.